Hello everyone, welcome back to Maverick Mods. Guys, I got to admit something. After getting the Firebird painted, that build up to the getting everything ready, it takes a lot out of you. And so I kind of went in vegetable mode for a few days. Haven't really come out of it yet, but there's still work to be done and there's still parts to be painted. So that's kind of what I'm concentrating on this week. Plus, we're going to take a look at the Firebird and maybe start doing a little color sanding as well. So grab your popcorn. Let's get started. There's quite a few pieces on the Firebird that need to be painted separately from the car itself. Some of them are just going to be body color. The rear spoilers, the front chin spoiler, the spoiler extensions on the in front of the wheel wells, mirrors, things like that. They're going to get the same paint treatment that the body of the Firebird did. There's other things like trim, door handles, taillight bezels, parking light bezels, headlight trim rings, things like that. They're going to get a little bit different treatment as far as paint goes. Those things are going to be painted a satin black, and what I'm using it's called Hot Rod Black. It's a single stage. It's a direct to metal paint. I've used it in the past. It's great stuff. But that's what's going to go on a lot of the trim. So let's start off by taking a look at, let's start off with the taillight bezels. Let's take a little side trip down OCD geek fine detail down that alley. So I've been working on the taillights, okay, taillight housings. The lenses can stand a little polished, but they're basically in pretty good shape. But the assembly itself, of course, this comes from the factory chromed. The bezel is chromed. And this whole thing comes apart. So it bolts on the backside. The bezel comes off. So that can be cleaned up separately. And the tail light housing itself splits apart as well. So I honestly didn't even look to see if you could buy each one of these pieces separately because they're all basically they're in good enough shape to rehabilitate. So the lenses, not a problem. The bezels, different story. So I've spent the last couple of days cleaning these bezels up in the sandblaster. And what gets these things, it's metal. They're not aluminum. So they're probably just, well, it's like what we like to call pot metal. I have no idea what pot metal is, what's in it, nothing like that. It's pretty soft metal. But then they chrome these things. And over time, of course, moisture, well, it gets in and it can bubble the chrome up, and which is what happened to these. This is which side is this? I guess that'd be the right side. This one not in bad shape. Had a few pits, here and there along the edges. It cleaned up pretty good. You have to run it through the sandblaster, or I should say you don't have to, but you should run it through something like a media blaster if you're going to paint these like I am. I'm going to paint these Hot Rod Black, so it's going to be a satin black. And it's a single stage direct to metal paint. But you need to prep the surface, and because they're chromed, sandblasting won't take all the chrome off. And I don't think I'd want to anyway, because the metal underneath is softer than the chrome. So if I got through all the chrome, I probably would destroy the metal underneath, which I want to save the metal underneath. So in this case, the best I can do is just roughen up the chrome surface, and that's where the media blaster, the sandblasting, comes out. So that's the passenger side. It turned out okay. Driver's side, right here, it was in a little rougher shape. Now, I've already run it through the sandblaster, and it required more than just that. I actually had to get out my Dremel, and I'm still going to have to get my Dremel out and then re-sandblast it again because it's got areas. So like right up in here, you can see where the sandblaster, a combination of my Dremel, the sandblaster, has kind of, it hasn't removed the pitting, but it's smoothed it out on the chrome portion. Now, when it's all said and done, I'm going to have to go in and use actually some body filler, actually some glazing putty on this to smooth the surface out. But even after 2 trips through the sandblaster, I've still got rough edges up here on the side. So I'm going to work a little bit with the Dremel and just show you, kind of some of the steps it takes to rehabilitate old parts. So what I've got here, I've got some edges right along here. You probably never see them, but I will. And I'm just going to take my Dremel. Okay, now like that one right there, you can see where the chrome has bubbled up and just kind of created a void under there. And that's all I'm doing is I'm just knocking that down so that the sandblaster can get underneath that. Now, like on this edge, or on this particular spot right down here, this is actually corroded into the pot metal. So that was just a big chrome bubble on top, but underneath it was just, like I said, corroded like crazy. I'm not going to fix that because the taillight lens, well, that's on the other side. The taillight lens is going to cover that right there, but I did figure just for, my OCD purposes, I'm going to just knock that bubble off. So I'll keep working on this. A little bit right there. A little bit right there. Okay. I've got some on the outer portion here, which that'll be very noticeable on the end result. So I'm going to hit that. Okay. Now, some of these didn't show up until I sandblasted it, which, that's not uncommon, because just that mechanical action of the sandblaster probably sometimes is enough to, sometimes it's enough to kind of loosen up, I guess you could call it, some kind of areas that you wouldn't have seen otherwise. So it looks like it's going to take a 3rd trip through the sandblaster, but that's okay. So at this point, I'm just feeling for spots that might need a little bit more attention. There's one right there. One right there. I worked on this quite a bit with the sandblaster and it never did come out. So I'll keep working on this. And like I said, one more trip through the sandblaster and this should be ready for filling and then painting. So I've been working on, tail light bezels. I got the door handles. One of the things I am working on right now, same drill. These are the, I guess, the light covers, or the, whatever you want to call them, decorative covers for the parking, or the running lights on the front bumper. These are in pretty good shape. Problem being is they're pretty rough castings. And I mean, they're really rough on the edges. Probably never see that, but I'm going to go ahead and hit these, like right there. You can kind of see on the edge there. It's a really rough edge. I'm going to take my Dremel and just address these edges. And then these will go in the sandblaster. They're going to get painted too. Now for the areas I couldn't get to with the Dremel, just come on with a little file set. I've got a round file in here somewhere, I think. Yeah, there it is. Okay. And I can just kind of hit the little spots like that. All right. Well, I'm going to keep working on this for a while. Run it through the sandblaster, then we'll take a look when I'm done. Switching over to trim. Now I've got one of the, I guess this would be the driver's side windshield trim. Again, now this is a little bit different. This is usually, these things are stainless steel. They're just extruded stainless steel, but they're polished. And so if you're going to paint your windshield trim, or window trim, I should say. Same as anything else, you've got to get a surface that is paint ready, and a nice shiny surface, paint's not going to stick to it. In fact, if you look at some of the 80s and 90s cars, GM did a lot of this, like the Monte Carlos and the whatever. They would have blacked out trim, and within a few years, it was flaking off of the trim because they didn't prep these properly. So how do we do that? Well, you got two options. Option one, sandpaper. And give you an idea, so here's a nice shiny area right there. And if I just take and start sanding, eventually you're going to get down to a rough surface. Sometimes I have a lot of patience. For this, I don't. So my technique, this is mine only. So if you don't like it, or this doesn't work for you, I take my angle grinder and I put a worn out flap disc on it. I think this is 120 grit. It is, it's here somewhere. I can't even tell. Whatever it is, it's worn out. And I just take I have an adjustable speed grinder. I set it on low speed, and I very carefully use the edge of the disc and very lightly run along there, and it does the same thing. Just like that. Let me go ahead and get this done, and we'll revisit this because you're not done when you use the angle grinder on it. Another benefit of using the angle grinder is a lot of times these old trim pieces, they'll have, after who knows how many repaints, they'll have paint on the edges. They'll have urethane up on the inside. And the angle grinder pretty much gets rid of that. Sandpaper, it tends to clog up the sandpaper. So we're going to go back to my 180 grit, and this is the final step, actually two more steps. So I'm using 180 grit, and I'm going to go over this entire piece with the 180 to try and knock some of the grinding scratches out. And I'm not going to get them all out, because if you take all the scratches out, you're back to polishing. But I'm going to get just the worst of the grinding scratches out with 180, and I'll probably hit it with 400. And I got a whole bunch of trim pieces to do. I've got a few trim pieces left to do. Basically the rear window trim. I've got the front window trim done. Over on this table, in these corner pieces. All right, let's see. Door handles are done. I need to do the door lock cylinders. These are the parking light bezels, body color. Mirrors, big body color. These are the trim ring surrounds for the parking lights. They will be hot rod black, hot rod black. Those are ready to go. Hot rod black, hot rod black. The reason I'm doing hot rod black first has to do over here. So on the bumper, of course, it's going to be body color, and it still needs to be body work a little bit, but I got to do something with the inside. And there's no sense in doing the inside of that bumper in body color. So I'm just going to paint it hot rod black, but I need to do that first. Same thing with the tail panel. Inside of the tail panel, I'm just going to put some paint on there because, well, frankly, it's just ugly. So I'm going to put some paint on the inside. Again, that's OCD, because this, you will never see this. I'm the only person that knows it. Well, you guys know it now too, but I'm the only guy that's ever going to know that. But I'm going to go ahead and do that before I get all of those pieces painted in body color. Okay, you guys get the picture. You've watched me paint things pretty often on this project. End result, I've got everything out of the booth. Well, I've got most of the stuff I painted hot rod black out of the booth. Belt molding, I just basically, this used to be chrome, that's blacked out. This is, see, what is that? Rear window trim, front window trim, or windshield trim. Windshield trim and rear window trim. These are the, that's the bezels for the taillight lenses. Headlight mounting hardware, parking lights, trim rings, door handles, door locks, parking lights. That's pretty much most of it, except there's a few things left in the booth itself. And like I said, I was going to do, I got the inside of the tail panel. This is aesthetics only, and that's my OCD. Nobody is ever going to see the inside of that. That got 2 coats because it doesn't, well, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. Same thing on the inside of the bumper. Again, nobody's going to see this except me, but I'll know it's there. That got 2 coats also because it doesn't really need much more. All the trim pieces got 3 coats, came out looking really good. What I've got now is body color for the spoilers, bumper, tail panel, spoiler extensions, mirrors, and we're going to work on the parking light bezels here in just a minute. Got a little something I've got to do on these before I can paint them. All right, we are back at the Firebird. It is back in the shop. Got it back from sequestering it in the building next door for, it's been about a week and a half. Yeah, about a week and a half. Just to give the paint and clear coat time to kind of cure a little bit before I start sanding on it. But one of the things that, frankly, in the grand scheme of things, I just flat forgot to do was test fit the parking light bezels. So let's take a look. See, now these things are marked. Like this one is, one of these is right hand rear, left hand rear, and then this one says left hand and right hand. So I'm assuming, you know, I got front and rear, left and right. So let's take the front left and fit that and see how it looks. All right, so this one says left hand. So basically, I'm banking on, so I'm assuming, is this, I don't know if it's left. Nope, that definitely doesn't fit that way. Okay, it's got to fit this way. So it comes in, said I didn't, you know, there's a factory fit and then there's my fit. My top to bottom, the reason I wanted to do it now, again, keeping in mind that I just flat forgot to do this, I probably would have wanted to do this now anyway, because I want the thickness of the paint to be on the body and inside the little lip in there, so that the fit's not so tight that when you tighten it up, it actually winds up cracking the paint. So I want to be careful about that. So I'm feeling pretty good here, pretty good. The gap back here is a little wider than the gap up here, but I think I can live with that because that's basically against the little flange there. So that's not a problem. This is against the flange here. This one is going to fit okay. Let's take a look at the one of the rears. We are back on the left rear, and I've got the one that says left rear on it, right there. So let's see, I don't know if this is a upside down or downside up. That doesn't fit very well that way, but it fits even worse that way. Okay, so let's go ahead and get this in and see what it looks like. So it fits in there. My top and bottom, I'm a little high there and a little wide there. Okay. So in theory, it could drop down a little bit, but I am up against my flange. However, it's too far aft. And it looks like my solution is going to be, I need to adjust these holes, which in hindsight, I should have done before I painted it, and mea culpa, I admit it, because the only way to fix those is probably come in here with a round file and refile these holes and move them over a little bit, because there's no easy way to readjust this piece. because if you look at it dead on, so I've got a gap right there, but I have no gap at all back here. It's touching at this point. So this whole thing needs to move that way and maybe down just a little bit. Yeah, it's tight up at the top, and I got a pretty good gap on the bottom. All right, well, let me play with this a little bit, and let's see if I can make this fit a little bit better. Well, there it is. A little bit of work with the file just to kind of move those holes a little bit to align it a little bit better. And it's basically centered and perfect in there. So let me get the rest of those done, and I can start doing body color paint on the rest of the accessories. Well, that's going to do it for this week, guys. Got the trim prepped, painted. Some of the accessories are ready for paint. Should get that done here in a couple of days. Firebird's back in the shop. Biggie on this one next is correct a few runs in the paint and start cutting buffing. Unfortunately, I won't be able to put any of the trim. I thought about this. Could I put any of the trim on before doing the cutting buffing? And the answer to that is not really, because that all kind of needs to be done and then the trim goes on after that. So that's kind of where we're at on that. So that will be the focus of, well, actually painting the spoilers, etc., and starting the buffing on the Firebird will be the focus for next week. Certainly appreciate everybody tuning in every week. Thanks, guys, for following along. You know, there is actually a light at the end of the tunnel. Hopefully it's a set of headlights. Please like, share, subscribe, notify, blah, blah, blah. You guys know the drill. We'll see you next week. Everybody, have a great day.